run your law firm the right way. This is the Maximum Lawyer Podcast. Your hosts, Jim Hacking and Tyson Mutrux. Let's partner up and maximize your firm. Welcome to the show.
Hey, it's Tyson, and welcome back to another bite-sized episode that's aimed at elevating your practice. This week, I want to talk about a book that I absolutely love, and I've talked about it on the podcast before. It's a book called Getting Things Done, The Art of Stress-Free Productivity by David Allen. I would say that this is one of those books that it's an essential reading. I really, really recommend it. If you've not yet read A World Without Email, I would read that one first, but this one is a really good book. It's going to give you some really practical approaches, but I'm going to give you the basics today. I'm not going to go through everything because it's fairly detailed with the book, but I'm going to give you the basics, and if you enjoy it, then go read the book. But before I get into that, for those of you that have not yet gotten their hands on it, we've got a unique roadmap that's called Maximum Lawyer Minimum Time. Typically, this is something that we only give to guild members. However, but for people that listen to the Saturday show especially, we are giving this for free. We're giving stage one of it for free to our members. And so all you have to do is text stage one to 314-501-9260. So you're not getting the full Maximum Lawyer Minimum Time. You get that when it comes to a guild membership for free. But for listeners of this show, you do get the first stage absolutely free. All you have to do is text 314-501-9260 and you will get it. All right, so let's talk about the book. The core idea around getting things done is moving tasks out of your brain, and then you record them somewhere that's external, and then breaking them down into actionable items. All right. The main thing I want to emphasize, and I know almost all of you have this problem, is getting those things out of your brain, out of your mind, out of your head, and into something. And I don't care what that something is. That thing could be into, you could pen and paper, you could put it into, you could take a note on your phone, whatever it may be. It's getting it somewhere. All right. Getting it somewhere that's outside of your brain. And that somewhere needs to be the same for everything. Okay? And this is something that it took me a little bit to get over, and that he talks a lot about putting everything that's in your brain, not just personal, don't separate from business, everything, and put it into one place. And that was something that I did. I was sort of having piles everywhere where, okay, this is for work. This is for personal life. Different areas of my personal life. This is for this, different parts of the firm. And that's why we had, several Kanban boards and all that. We've started to reduce all of those different boards, all those different piles. I'm calling them piles. He doesn't really call them piles, but I'm calling them piles, reducing those and getting them into a more centralized location. That way it can be easier organized. Okay. The whole approach, it's designed to reduce the stress and improve just organizational efficiency, your personal efficiency. And I think if you adopt some of these new techniques, you're definitely going to be able to tell a difference in your day-to-day productivity. I can tell you, I definitely do. So let's get into some of the key concepts around getting things done. The first part is that capturing everything. All right. I've got this broken into 5 different sections. Then I'm going to go through his old workflow. There's a newer one that he has too, but I'm going to go over the old one, and I'm going to encourage you to buy the book to get the new one. But I'm going to go over it with you now. All right. So you want to make sure you record all of your tasks and get it into some external system. Talked about that already. Really, really big part of the process. And something that he does talk about is how you stress over these things, right? What happens is they stay in your head, and not only do you forget many of them, but it's when you're thinking about them, so you've not gotten it out of your brain, it's constantly on your mind, and it's not like you can think about 2 things at one time. You can think about one thing at a time. And when you're supposed to be thinking about maybe writing that brief, you're instead thinking about how you're supposed to take your kids to the theme park on Saturday, and you got to remind someone to do something before that happens. So you're thinking about that, but if you had just written it down into your list of things that need to be done into your system. So it's not a to-do list, by the way. It's not a to-do list, but you get it into your system. You don't have to worry about that because you have a system for it and you don't have to worry about it, and you can focus on the things you need to focus on. So capturing it, really, really important. The next part of this is clarifying what the tasks are. So this is a big part of it as well, because you're going to start to filter things. So you're going to need to determine the next actionable steps for each item. And then you need to decide how to proceed with that specific task. What does each item really mean? And what is the next step? It depends on the tasks, but think about it like unpacking a suitcase. You see what's inside the suitcase, and then you need to decide what to do with each one of those individual items as they come through. Okay, so that's a good way of thinking about it. The next thing that you're going to do is you're going to organize. All right, picture your tasks going into buckets. All right, one for the office, maybe one for home. And by the way, I'm not saying separate boards, separate sheets. I'm saying like same system, but you are thinking about dropping them into different buckets. So we'll make sure we're clear about this. But picture the tasks, putting the tasks into different buckets. And I will even say I've got office, home broken into several different buckets underneath that. So think about the different buckets. Maybe one for errands, and then you want to categorize your tasks by context, and then that way you're not just staring at a big mountain of tasks. You can look at them. You've got all your tasks in one place, but now you've got them separated into those different piles instead of one big mountain. It allows you to, once you filter them into these different buckets, you can do a lot more things with them. Because what you don't want is, all right, you got to make a tax payment, right? You don't want that in the same pile where you need to go pick up your dry cleaning, right? Those are, you don't want that to get in the way with each other. And you're going to want to be able to separate those in some way. All right. Next part, reflect. Another big crucial part. And it's one of those ones that you're going to want to overlook. I even have it on my calendar for Fridays for reflection. You can do it whenever you want. I do recommend that you do that, but you need to regularly review and update your task list so that you can stay current with things. It's also a good time for you to be thinking about, am I collecting all this information in the right way, the way I should? Is it the most effective way of doing it? But reflecting is going to allow you to look at your list and then decide what you can tackle next. You can start to triage things, prioritize things, however you want to put it. But you want to check in with your system and know where you are. That's a big important part of it. It's an important way to figure out where you're going next. And then the last part of this is engage, right? This is where the magic happens. Now you have a clear head. You got a well-sorted list. You can pick what to focus on now without that nagging feeling that I was kind of talking about, that you're forgetting something. So I do really quickly want to go through his workflow, which is really cool. I recommend that you get the book so you can check this out. But the stuff comes into this big box. You figure out what it is. After that, you determine, is this actionable? If it's not, you can either eliminate it, so you can throw it in the trash. You can incubate it, right? So you can maybe deal with something later, do something later with it. So this is sort of a someday maybe pile is what he calls it, or there could be multiple lists under the someday maybe piles. And then the other one is reference. Maybe this is just a piece of reference material. So you'll put that in your reference materials folder, or maybe a multiple reference materials folder. It could be in paper format, digital format, whatever it may be. But these are items that are not actionable. Okay. If it is actionable, okay, you're going to need to decide what's the next action. And this could be something where there are multiple steps. If there are multiple steps, you're going to turn those into projects. All right. And we'll talk about projects in just a second. But if you determine, okay, what's the next action, you can do essentially 3 different things with it. If it's going to take you less than 2 minutes, you do it. You just do it right then. Don't do anything else with it. You're going to do it. If it's actionable and if it's going to take more than 2 minutes, you can delegate it. That's another thing. And you're going to delegate it. You'll have your different pile where you're going to delegate things. You can delegate to someone else. And then the third thing is you can defer it. All right. Some of these things you would put on a calendar. So this is something that you're going to defer it, but let's say it's a phone call. Okay. This is something that I need to make this phone call. Okay. Put that on the calendar. You know that you're going to call at 5 p.m. on Monday or whatever, but you can defer that and you're putting it somewhere though. It's been tracked. You're putting it on the calendar. Good. Or if it's something that's a bigger project, you can create your list of projects. It's going to be deferred, but you're putting it in your projects, which I'm going to get to the projects next. And then you can start to tackle things in order of priority. Now, let's go back to projects in a second, because remember, you're identifying, is it actionable? Yes, it's more of a bigger project. There's multiple tasks underneath it. What you're going to do then is you're going to have this separate section for projects, and under each one of those, you're going to have multiple tasks underneath it. And that's going to include maybe project plans. You're going to go back through and review some of the actions that need to be taken. It's almost like a loop where you take the next most important task in that project. You get that thing done. You kind of circle back through. What's the next action? Okay. You go back to the project. You look, all right, the next step on this is task number 2. And you kind of go through and you go through and you chisel down that project. And let's say you get to a point where it's an item that you're waiting on someone. Well, you kind of put that in the waiting on someone pile. If you're using, we talked about Kanban boards in another episode, but you could even have a Kanban board where these are the items that you're waiting on someone. And that's one of these things where you see all your tasks and you know that you're waiting on someone. So you can look at that and you can see, and then routinely you work into your process. I need to revisit my waiting on someone pile, go look at it. All right. I need to follow up with Mr. Smith, follow up with Mr. Smith, and maybe you're able to knock out that task. So that's how this process works. I highly recommend it. I think it's a really cool process. Check out the book. I think it's great. So it's one of those ones where it's essential reading in my opinion. But as a reminder, I'm going to wrap things up. If you have something you want me to cover on the Saturday show, shoot me a text. Just text me 314-501-9260. We have a lot of great suggestions, and I'm getting to as many of them as I can. So keep them coming. Until next week, though, remember that consistent action is the blueprint that turns your goals into reality. Take care.
Thanks for listening to the Maximum Lawyer Podcast. To stay in contact with your host and to access more content, go to MaximumLawyer.com. Have a great week and catch you next time.